Wolves surrounded the wounded guy. He thought it was the end, but the impossible happened. One day, in August 2005, Alex, the owner of a farm restaurant, went to the mountains to catch rabbits for business. However, something unexpected happened to him. Walking in the forest in the early morning, he felt a little cold. Just then, he heard voices in the grass in the distance. With a low whine, a wolf cub's head was exposed. Alex saw that the wolf cub was not very big, so he dared to scrape the grass around the wolf cub. He found that the wolf cub was bleeding a lot and showed signs of being bitten by other animals all over its body. Alex watched the wolf cub and saw that it was hurt so badly that if it didn't get medical treatment, it might die soon. So he took it slowly in his arms and went down the mountain. When he got home, Alex took a piece of rag and spread it on the floor and put the wolf cub on it. Then he went to the room and took out the medicine chest. He took out the gauze and gently wiped the wolf cub's wound, and his father helped him bandage the wolf cub together. Alex asked what to feed the wolf cub. Alex's father said, impatiently, that wolves definitely eat meat and prefer chicken. Alex thought it was pitiful, so he went out immediately, and after a while, he was in the yard and told his dad that he wanted him to take the wolf cub over. He said they had a lot of chickens in the house, so he killed one to feed to his wolf cub. Then they put the chicken and the wolf cub together, and after a while, the wolf cub slowly devoured the chicken's carcass. Under Alex's thoughtful care, the wolf cub's injuries gradually recovered, and he grew up a lot. Every time Alex fed it, it always snuggled closely to Alex's side, as if Alex was its relative. Although the wolf cub was very obedient, considering the nature of the wolf, Alex often took it to the mountains and trained its hunting skills to keep it wild. Alex decided to wait for the wolf cub to be released back into the forest when it was healed. One morning, 3 months later, Alex fed the wolf cub and took it to the forest. He took the wolf cub to a lush grass meadow halfway up the mountain. To Alex's surprise, the wolf cub still refused to leave. So the first release failed. Alex thought there was a good chance they were getting too close. The second time, he took it deep into the mountains. After reaching the deep mountains, the wolf cub walked in front of Alex. Alex said goodbye to it in his heart, then turned and quietly left. Worried that the wolf cub was following him, Alex walked down the mountain as fast as he could. But when he returned home, the sight in front of him shocked him. The wolf cub came home before him. Seeing Alex panting and panting, the wolf cub seemed to think it had won and ran around the yard. Alex felt helpless, but he didn't let it go. So the third release began. Alex took a sack from home and put the wolf cub in it, then took it to the forest 5 kilometers away on a motorcycle and released it. He let it go back into the woods and not to go back, so he waved home. However, it didn't take long for the wolf cub to appear at the door of his yard again. Alex had no choice but to keep it at home and think about finding a new opportunity before releasing it. One morning, Alex was feeding the chickens in the yard. As soon as he entered the yard, he found that the chickens were all dead, and the chicken cage was opened. Alex had no idea what was going on. While wondering why the chickens were dead, he hurriedly asked his father to check what had happened. The wolf cub had been at their house for a long time, but nothing like that had happened. At that time, the chickens were all dead, but not taken, and they thought maybe they didn't kill the chickens for food. They were still puzzled. That night, neither Alex nor his father slept, but stayed in the house to see how the chickens died. After waiting for a long time, they heard an abnormal noise from the yard in the second half of the night. They quietly walked out of the house with the long poles they had prepared. There also seemed to be noises in the wolf cub's house. They walked over to find out that it turned out to be a weasel. They were about to come forward when the wolf cub walked from the house to the weasel and raised his head proudly and howled. Then it rushed towards the weasel and fought with it. The physique of the weasel was no less than that of the wolf cub, but the wolf cub had an advantage, which made the weasel lose. After the battle, the wolf cub finally won. But the wolf cub was injured, and again Alex took good care of the wolf cub. The wolf cub soon recovered and stayed at Alex's house for a while. The wolf cub was recovering well, so they felt it was time to send it home. This time, the wolf cub seemed to know Alex's good intentions, so it gradually left. The wolf cub was back in the woods, but Alex had a hard time forgetting their time together. 2 years later, the business of Alex's farm restaurant was getting better and better, and people often wanted to eat wild rabbit meat. So Alex went up to the mountain more often at that time. The journey was not far, but it was not easy to go. After briefly saying goodbye to his father, Alex walked into the woods with the tools. But then, the danger was coming quietly, without any warning. The sound of a big branch breaking suddenly sounded behind him, and snow fell from the branch. As soon as he turned his head, the big tree behind him fell towards him. Unprepared, and the snow was too slippery, so he didn't have time to dodge the fall. The fallen tree pressed down on his legs, and the pain spread all over his body instantly. Alex was sweating profusely. After a struggle, perhaps from aching legs or a rush, no matter what he did, it was in vain. The tree was still pressing down on his legs, preventing him from moving. Time was running out, and Alex wanted to wait for someone to come and save him, but he thought that was unlikely. Even if someone found him, he would be frozen to death or eaten by wild animals. Alex couldn't move under the tree in the snow, so he became colder and more desperate. He closed his eyes and waited to die. Soon there were several wolf howls. Alex thought he was hallucinating, but he struggled to open his eyes to look at the source of the sound. He saw a wolf standing not far away. Alex was shocked and desperate. He could only close his eyes again and wait for death. There was no sound after a long time. He just felt that the big tree pressing his legs seemed to slowly be moved. He opened his eyes again in disbelief. At that time, a pack of wolves were biting at branches and dragging the tree that was resting on his legs. He wondered if they had come to rescue him. Although he felt that the possibility of that was very small, he had a glimmer of hope. One of the wolves saw him open his eyes and walked toward him. The wolf quickly stood beside Alex and licked his cheeks, which were blue with cold, which made Alex feel even more strange. He wondered if the wolf thought he was dirty and wanted to lick him clean before eating him. Then, it licked his hands and kept repeating that action. The wolf's expression showed no malice. He felt that the wolf's eyes seemed somewhat familiar. Alex recalled the wolf he had rescued was also released on this mountain. He wondered if it was the wolf he had saved before. Alex felt a little relieved to think that the wolf was still licking his cheeks and hands, which made Alex a little warmer. It seemed that the wolf kept him warm that way. At that time, the wolves were still dragging the tree that was pressing down on his legs. After a lot of hard work, the wolves finally pulled the big tree away. So Alex breathed a sigh of relief. His legs stiffened under the pressure of the tree. The wolf saw that Alex still couldn't move and was lying on the ground shaking. So it raised its head and howled, and all the wolves nearby gathered around. They lay beside him as if to warm him with their bodies. Over time, Alex became warmer and his hands moved freely. He sat up with difficulty, checking his legs, and found nothing serious, just numb and uncontrollable. So he had to keep rubbing his legs with both hands. After some rubbing, his legs finally regained consciousness and he could barely stand up, which made him very happy. Only then did he look back and realize that the wolves had left, leaving only their footprints in the snow. By the time he staggered home, it was almost dark, but he finally returned home safely. He was rescued by the wolves, and he thought that might be God's reward for him. If he hadn't rescued the wolf cub and released it, he might have died by that time. There are many things that animals repay, and feelings are not only exclusive to humans, but animals too.